Okay, good morning once again. So, in the last session, we discussed more about tuple, dictionary, and dictionary methods, and set methods. So, did anyone try these all set methods? Yes or no? So, we discussed what is difference update. We also discussed intersection, union. I asked to check the remaining methods. Update also we discussed. Anyone tried? If yes, just type Y. If no, just type N in the chat box. Am I audible? Okay. So no one tried. I like your honesty. But you should try today at least. Because as I told you should know the methods how to use. Say the dictionary methods, all the methods I have explained, but set methods, some of the methods we discussed, and then I said that the same way you have to use other methods as well. But you should know how to use that method, and then if you try with some example, then only you'll get idea. That is the only reason, right? Okay, so now we will go to the file handling concept today. So day 14 notes. Okay, so generally, if you want to work with any language, in general, any programming language, in general, there are three ways we can store the data. So one is using with variables. So we already discussed that variables concept. So when you use variables we are using to store the data. So there are different types of variables we discussed in Python. But whenever if you are using variable, the data is not permanent and also less security here. And there is a second way we can store the data using with the file. So whenever if you are using file, the data we can store and then the data it is permanent, but again here no secure generally. And the third one we actually use database to store the data. So this database generally permanent and secure. So this database can be any database here. It can be a SQLite 3, it can be a MySQL, it can be a Sybase, DB2, MongoDB, MariaDB, Oracle, whatever it is. So if you are learning any programming language, So you should know how to work with variables. You should know how to work with the file, how to handle these files, file handling, we call it as. And then we should also know how to work with the database in general. So then only we can say that, okay, you are good in that particular programming language. So far as we already completed these variables, we understood how to define, how to access, what are the different methods, and then what is the use of that method, everything we discussed. Now we are here now. So this is something intermediate level now. So we should know how to work with file. So file is actually what? File, it contains some text, some data. So how we can actually read that file data, or using with Python, how we can create a file. So when I execute the Python code, I don't want to print output on my IDE or my command prompt. I want to send that output to the file. So that is actually here we need to understand. And then later database, once if you are good with the module, and for these databases, we are going to use modules. Generally in programming languages also, we have something drivers concept like ODBC, JDBC, like that we use. So that is, we use actually the database connectivity. So that generally we call it as a driver. So here we don't have specific driver like that, but the module itself, it is actually driver, we can say that. We will see this part later, but now here we are in file handling and we'll try to understand this part. Okay, so simply working with a text file. So for any file, in general, we have a steps like this: open a file, process a file, close a file. So first to open, then process, then close. What is this process? The process, it can be a read, it can be a write, it can be append. So we should first open a file for what? Either for read, for write, or for append. And then you must need to close. So generally what happens, for example, see, in Python, everything it's object based. We know that everything it's object based. Even when you create a variable, that actually what internally we discussed in detail, that is actually what creating object. Same thing here also for file handling, it creates object, that is file object, we call it as file object. So using with Python, if you want to read the text file here, the syntax is like this: file object equal to, and there is a function called open. So FO is a file object, it can be any name, okay? Or first we'll try to understand what is open function. So the open function here, it is used to, it is used to read or write or append the file. So open is a function, it is used to read the file or write the file or append the file. See how simple it is. This one function we are using for that. But as I told, like everything, it's object based. When you open any file, it immediately create one object. So that object we call it as a file object. So the file object name can be any name. It's a user defined name only. You can write your name also. But it should not be like a result keyword name. So we know result keywords. So tell me anyone here how to check result keywords. If someone watching this later also in YouTube, and then we just type here whenever if I ask some question, maybe in the comments like that you can type. So how to check the result keywords? We discussed in the last sessions. There are two ways we can check. Anyone here? So no one practicing then, right? So based on your responses only, I'll try to continue the next week. If no one is responding, and then I may think that will stop it. Otherwise, there is no use for this, right? If you're not practicing and then not doing anything, and then no use just taking at morning 6 a.m. rest. No one, no idea. So one way is import keyword, but not dir of keyword. Basically, dir of keyword, it will give you the properties. So I told there is a property called keyword dot. So what is that property? If you want to check, then you can use dir of keyword. So I told KW list. This is the one actually, right? KW is a keyword list. So keyword dot KW list. So these are the result keywords. This is one way to get. And the other way I told just go to the help prompt. And then I told that type here the name keywords. And then I can see it is giving all the list of keywords here, right? So these all are important. And then I told no need to buy hard, only just small things need to remember. And also I told two different ways, not the single way here. Fine. So this is the way, right? So these names we cannot use as a file object name. Equal to open of what is the file name? So file name we write here. And remember, this file name should be text file name only. You cannot provide any JSON file, Excel file, or something .pdf, JPG, something like that. Because for all other extensions, we need modules. But for text files without any modules, you can open and then you can read the text. So that is a .txt and extension we should provide here if we are using Windows operating system. If you are using Linux operating system, Generally, in Linux operating system, there is no extensions in general for this, for the regular files. You can simply use that file as it is. But here, the file name, it ends with the .txt. You should use that .txt. And then, what is the mode of? The mode is actually, you want to read the file, or you want to write, or you want to append. So that is mode. So generally, there is a default in general. Like anyone here aware of Linux operating system? Anyone working using Linux platform? I think day one, many people said Linux, Linux, Linux. I just want to check anyone from Linux background here. No. So then no need to cover Python in Linux, right? See, okay, so why I'm just asking this, because, for example, let's say if you are maybe planning for something DevOps. So DevOps completely, I can say 90%, like many times we use Linux operating system only. So if you are maybe planning for DevOps, or even sometimes if you are actually planning for, like, if you think this is the roadmap, if you start Python here, and this is the actually the first language we need to learn for a roadmap as well, right? So in AI roadmap also, sometimes we use Linux. Not every time, but DevOps most of the time we can say. So that is the reason you should also know Linux, at least basics. And inside the Linux also you should know how to use Python. But the question I asked, the reason is different. The reason is actually the mode here. The mode, for example, if you are using in Linux cat command, so we use a cat file name to read the file. So without using any mode, because there is a default mode actually, that is a read mode. We use a less than symbol, but without using less than, we directly open the file. So that means most of the time, any file, if you want to open, read mode is optional. So if you know the cat command in Linux, you'll get idea like how we can read the data generally. Okay, fine. So here also, whenever if you are reading the file, always the read mode is optional. But what are the different modes available? See the mode here for read, we use R. R means read only. So this is a default one. And we have R plus. R plus is read and write. This is not a default, okay? We should provide. And then coming to the write, W we have, this is write only. And W plus we have write and read. So the difference between R plus and W plus, R plus, assume that I have already existing file and then I want to read the data and then write it. So read priority first. And here, assume I don't have any file first, I want to create it, and then whatever I created in a text file, I want to read that. That is W plus. And then we have append. So append is A means append, and A plus is append and read. And also, this is for normal text file. Let's say, for example, you created something, maybe you have some Java program or C++, and you executed that program. So let's say you executed C++ or Java, it generates something dot class file. Or maybe if you are using something C language, or if you executed that code, means if you compile, okay, if you compile that code, then it generates some .exe file. So these are some binary files. So here also, if you are using modules, automatically it will create some .pyc files. That is a Python compiled file, we call it as. So binary files you cannot read directly like this. So if you want to read binary file, we use RB, binary, read binary, write binary like this. So we'll see this later, binary file, how you can read, but this is the first need to understand. What is the difference between write and append? Anyone here? What is the difference between write and append? So when we use write, when we use append. Okay, so for example, see, if file exist, if file not exist, these two scenarios. Append means add something, correct. Append means overwrite, append. No, append is not overwriting. Append means add to the existing file. That is correct. See now, let's say, see there are two scenarios here. One is file exist and the other one is file not exist. So write mode if you are using, try to understand this. Write mode if you are using, if file already exists, it simply deletes that existing file and it will create a new file. That means it will overwrite the data. Overwrite the data. So it deletes the existing file and it recreates the new data. That is write mode. If already file is exist. If file not exist, it will create a file with the data, with the given data. So for append mode also, if file not exist, it will create a file with the given data. So append mode, write mode, both are same in case if file is not exist. But if file is exist, write mode is what? Overwriting the data. But append mode, it will add data at end of the file. Getting my point? This is the difference. If you only know the first one, file exist, if file exist, what is happening, then we'll get a confusion if file not exist. You should know both the cases. So many people says append mode, if file not exist, it will not create a file. So means what is their understanding? Always file should exist if you want to append the data. No, right? So that's not correct. If you are directly using append mode, if file not exist, it will create. Getting my point? So this one also you should know. So if file not exist, it will create a file, even append mode. We will see now with examples. Now, so here now in that case, see, now we discussed what are the different modes available. And then if you see again, go back to the syntax. Let's say if you want to read, how to read a file. There is a syntax now. Mode is what? R or R plus. So let me create a text file first. Let me create one text file. I'm creating something test1. So this test1 having something Python. So this is a text file. This file is using for something understanding file handling. Okay. So there are 3 lines I created here. And file object name, any name. I'm using FO equal to. So this is a user defined name only, right? We created like this. I created a FO. Open off. What is the file name? File name is test1.txt. See, it is showing that file name actually. So that extension is must. And then read mode is optional, but still I am writing this read mode. Let's first try to understand. And then I'm trying to print FO. So now here you need to understand this. Based on the syntax, I used it, right? But what FO contains? FO is a file object. So it will not give the file data immediately. So this is a just object. So what it will give now? It will give that, okay, which file you are reading. The file name, sorry. The file name is text1.txt. It will give you the file name. And which mode you are reading, that is R. And also, it will give you some encoding format. Let's see this. Say the name of the file here. What is the name of the file? Text1.txt. What is the mode we are using? R. There is an encoding format, default CP1252 it is using. You know, whenever if you save the file, normal text file, every time internally it uses some encoding. Now, if you, let's say for example, I am trying to open Notepad. There is a normal Notepad only, right? So this is a text file. I'm just writing some text. Right side bottom, you can see there is a UTF-8. Not sure how many people observed this. UTF-8 at the bottom. Did anyone observe here? Yes or no? When I save this file, go to the save as option, and I'm trying to save somewhere in the Python, for example. And when I provide a file name, let's say S1, and it is understanding save as type as a text document. But you can see there is encoding automatically. So means we never observe this thing, but internally it uses everything what some encoding format for every text. So these encoding formats, there are different encoding formats. UTF-8 is there, ANSI is there, and see UTF-8 with BOM is there. You can use any encoding actually. Here it is by default. The similar way, Python also by default it is taking one encoding format that is CP1252. There are multiple encoding formats. Let's say if you don't want this encoding format, you can use encoding equal to while writing the code itself. encoding it's equal to, we just observed there is a UTF-8, right? UTF-8 can provide that. So we just checked here, there is encoding UTF-8 and then try to run it now. See, there is no UTF-8 correct. Means the encoding whatever you provide, it should be the proper one, UTF-8. That is correct, UTF-8. So the encoding, let me try like this. Now you can see it accepted. So you may think that, okay, if you provide anything between a single quote, it accepts. Now I'm just typing hi and then execute here. There is no hi encoding format, okay? So it also validate whether this is a valid encoding or not. If you are really good with that encodings, why we use and then where we use, what are the different types of encoding based on your writing code, and then if you want to read the file, or maybe if you want to create with specific encoding, and then you can provide it. It accepts. But here by default, what? By default, it is taking some encoding format. If you don't want, okay, no problem. You don't need to provide anything here. Python is taking care that default encoding format for Windows, that is CP1252. So it may change for Linux again, Linux data, Linux file data. But it is taking by default. Now, what FO contains, what is the name of the file? So if you want to print only the name of the file, how to print? So print, see, I'm using file name here. What is the file name? You just use FO dot name. That is a FO dot name is actually what? This is one parameter. P means parameter. This is a parameter here, which is a variable. You can use just FO dot name. And then if you want to see what mode it is opening file, you can just write print F string mode is, simply I'm writing F4 dot mode. Let me run this here. Now you can see what is the file name we open, text1.txt. What is the mode? It is read mode. From FO we are printing. So you may think that, okay, these all are fine, but where is the data still not printed, right? Our requirement, I want to print this file data, text1.txt. Before that, we should also know there is a file object. Whenever if you open file object, we actually discussed that we need to close that, right? So file object, when you open, we must need to close that file object. Otherwise, the problem is if file object is open, and then again, if you are trying to use, the same file with the same object, it will not open. It says that this file object already opened. You need to close that first. So whenever if you are opening any file object, you must need to close that object. How to close a file object? So why we need to close? See, here it is okay, at least for file handling level. So the file object name dot close, which means F4 dot close. For us, F4 dot close. Okay, so you must need to close this file object. There are two different ways we can write. If you write this way, then you need to close explicitly F4 dot close, this syntax, say open of text1.txt. There is another syntax, we'll discuss that later. See, here, okay, let's say if file is open, and if you want to read the same file again, maybe in the somewhere in the script, if you're not closing that object, it says that this file already open. But why we are practicing from here? For example, assume that, okay, you are connecting to the database and then database object it creates. If you're not closing that database object, that means the connection object, there is a connection object. Assume this particular database having only limited connections, 500. Your Python script keep connecting and then executing some query, but it's not closing that connection. Connecting it, executing something, and then the connection still open. And again connecting, 500 connections done. Even database person also cannot connect now because the limitation of connections done over. No one can able to connect this database now because the limitation is complete. It may be some different, the errors you may get, like maybe some deadlock or some other exceeded connection, something like that. But what is actually as a programmer our job here? Whenever if you are trying to connect the database, you must need to close the connection. Almost similar thing here we are discussing. If you are opening a file, you must need to close that file object. It's not equal to database thing, but we are practicing from here the best practice. Then later, if you are using database, then you must need to close that connection. So this is how we close here the file object. Then that object it will close, and then we can reopen again if you want whenever. Okay, then how to get the data? So see, for example, here for read again, there are some read operations. So read operations, we use a file object dot read, file object dot read line, file object dot read lines. So there are different options like this. So the file object dot read means it will read the complete file, read complete file as a single string. So complete file it will read as a single string. So it will read only one line here. So simply it will read one line, only one line from the current cursor. So current cursor means where is the current cursor? From there it will read. But again as a string on. And read lines method, it is used to read complete file as a list. So now you should also know the list concept if you want to understand the file handling. So how many people aware of list concept here? So list concept we discussed, how to define list methods, multiple things. Okay, let's see now. So I'm trying to use these options now. So first let me open a file here using with the read mode. And then let's see file object dot read. So I'm using some variable name equal to f4 dot read. So what we observed f4 dot read, it will read the complete file data as a string and it assigns to the variable now. So if I print x, it contains the complete file data as a string. So I want to check that type also. What is the type of x? Now run this. So the text file which we opened here, this is the text1.txt, these 3 lines of text. Now if you observe here, the 3 lines of text we got. And then what is the type of this now? It's a string type. Getting my point? F4 dot read, we are using to read the complete data as a string. Now let me go with what is F4 dot read line. So read line, it will read only one line. So now I'm going to use same way, but instead of read, I'm going to use here read line. Let's see this. Let me run. So it is only just printing first line from the file because the current cursor is first line only. It is printing only first line, and then you can see it is also string. Let me use the last one, read lines. See, I'm using read lines here. So read lines, what we understood, it will read the complete file as a list. See, now the data, it is coming in a list format here. So you can see this, it started with square bracket, ended with square bracket. But first line Python, and then it includes even slash n, right? So whenever if you save the file, what we did, we actually used here enter for the next line, enter for the next line. So that enter it is taking as a slash n here. And see the slash n here, the slash n here. So that new line is actually taking as a slash n. So let's say, for example, see, I'm trying to remove this for the last line and save it. You must need to save. So now there is no new line for the last line. Here there is a new line, right? Let me execute again. See, there is no new line because I deleted that new line. But I want to print this text line by line here. Tell me how we can print this text line by line. Python in the next line, this is a text file. Next line, this file is using for understanding file handling. How we can print that line by line. So there is a list here. Using what? Using for loop. Now I'm using for loop. Let me write this for loop here. For loop for I in x, because the text we assign to the x variable. Print I. If you see here the data, the print function by default it will give one new line. But in the list also there is a additional new line, right? Slash and everything. What happens now? The text it is printing like this. It's not printing in next line immediately. Print is giving by default one new line. And in the list also having another one. So that is giving Python and one new line extra like this. Anyone tell me here how we can delete that new lines? Yeah. How to delete this new line now? Now, pop we are using to delete a last value, not the specific character. Which means in this list, if you want to delete the last value, this file is using for understanding file handling, you can apply pop. Complete last line it will remove. What is remove method? Remove method we are using to delete the specific item. Let's say I want to delete Python. Let's say I want to delete, this is a text file. You can apply remove method to delete the specific item using with that item value. Instead of index, pop is by default last index, it deletes last value. But let's say if you want to delete a specific value, then you can use remove. And what else? See, whenever if I am applying for loop, it is not list method. You need to understand the string method here because while printing the text, it is actually reading at a time one string, Python. That is a string now. Second time, this is a text file, one string it is. Third time, this is a file using for understanding file handling. Again, it's a string now because it is reading each and every line as a one string. So to delete a new line, we discussed two different ways in the last sessions. I think I explained this in string methods. So anyone have idea what is strip method? L strip, R strip we discussed. See, one you can use here. Since it's a, see now when I type I dot, if you observe here, it is showing all the string methods. That means what? This ID knows that I contains one string. Of course, we are reading the text from list, but one time, one string it is reading. It is iterating, right? Each and every value. So if you are using strip, it will remove white spaces. This is a method. But I want to delete right side only, that right side new line. So you can use R strip. Yeah, R strip you can use. Or you can also use strip if you want directly, but R strip is specific. I want to delete right side new line. Now see the output. You are not getting any new line now, right? This is what I told you need to know all the methods. In the coming sessions, we'll keep on use that. So if you're not aware of these things now, the basics, whatever we discussed, it will be difficult now to understand. So this is one way. And there is another way also. See now, let me first write print again. So print of I. Let me execute. You can see the new lines it is coming. You can simply use comma end equal to. So end equal to, we discussed this as well. So what is end equal to? End equal to by default print is giving one new line. If you want to remove that new line, you can use end equal to. So here if you are using end equal to, it also applies what? To delete this new line now. And then you can see the text again what say. So either you should know this concept or you should know the string method, strip method. String method, strip. Or you can use end equal to. I think first or second session we discussed what is end equal to delete the new lines. So generally, see, let's say if I print something, print hi, print by. So what the print function is doing, every time it will give you new line. That is the carriage return we call it as. So type mission, if you see in the type mission, when you type in the type mission something and then the next line, how it will go. Once the first line completed, there is a concept called carriage return, right? So we, like the type writer, it push that carriage back and then immediately it will go to the next line and then it will print. Otherwise, it will overwrite the same line. It will type on the same line. How it is going to the next line. So that concept we generally call as a carriage return. So that is basically what every language nowadays by default we are getting here as a new line. Carriage written is a new line. Otherwise, it will print on the same line hi and then on same line something by. It's not like that. So it is printing in a new line. So if you see hi and then next line by. But some reason I don't want these two lines like this. I want in the same line hi and then immediately by. So then you can delete this new line using with what ND code. So when you delete at the first line hi and then new line if you delete immediately by it comes here. See, after by also I want to delete the new line. Then you can write end equal to. Then I execute. See this, that gap it deleted. So this is end equal to concept to delete the new lines. Okay. So I hope the concept's clear now. So only we understood how to read the file. If it is clear, just type C in the chat box. Okay, so tomorrow we will see how to write, how to append the data. So we'll try to complete that part tomorrow, okay, in the next session. Thank you all then. Have a great day. We'll stop today.